way it works is you have, well, let's see how the paper does it. Anyway, okay, so you have blocks, which are basically just a collection of transactions. And then you have like the transaction history, which is what they call a Merkle tree, which is like, so, is it like, yeah. So it's just a regular tree basically, but it like, you kind of draw it side, well, you don't have to draw it, but the top is newer. So a block, you have a block, you have a new block. The new block is the parent of these. Each one carries a hash. So the first block, the hash is just, there's a bit in here. And this bit is called the nonce or whatever. So it's like just a random value to mess up so your hash is different. So you have like transactions and you have this nonce thing. And the nonce thing is basically, it's just a mess up hash. So, and you have your hash for each block. So this first block with no children just has the nonce and these transactions, and it has to make a hash. There's an algorithm to determine, so like the length of the chain also determines how many bits on the hash, but the point is you have like this hash or whatever, it's 256, it's a SHA 256 double hash or whatever, but you have so many bits on the front or whatever that have to be like 0. So what you want to do is hash this until you get so many bits of 0. And since hashes are fairly unpredictable by design, you can't really try to get zeros here. So you have to just keep hashing and changing the amounts or whatever until you get something that happens to have that bit. And so what?
Just say you might need to explain what a hash is.
Oh,
it's not potatoes. I promise.
Okay, so
or the other hash.
A hash. So if you go on for hash tables in data structures, I think we covered that. So a hash table in data structures is basically you have your domain of interest, which if you have a hash table, it's like you have some memory I want to fill in, and then you have some data you want to put somewhere. So you have a function that maps some data that you have to this range, hopefully fairly randomly, so that it doesn't all end up in the same spot. That'd be fairly useful, right? So for a hash table in data structures or whatever, you take some data and you run it through a function or whatever, and you end up with a number. Well, this is a terrible example, but so you have a string, like str is the content of the string, or whatever. So you have a function that maps it to some random number, say like 10. So str is 10, but say we're dealing with strings, you know everything's going to fall between like 0 and 128 probably for each one of these values. And they're probably going to fall between like numerics and characters more. So you don't want something that for every alphabetic character or whatever ends up being like really close to 10 or whatever, you know. You want something where if you change it from like ST or something, it ends up being not 10. It probably should be like some weird number, like 1 or something, you know. So that you end up with, in your memory, if you have like 12 blocks or whatever, you don't all end up here because that messes up your like O notation and stuff. Because if you, okay, so if you hash it, you should get an address. Then that gives you the offset from the beginning. You put it over there or whatever. And then how you handle duplication in hash tables sometimes is the one that Chang uses is the round robin one, which is basically, you can also do lists or whatever else you want to do. But if this one is full, you go to this one. If that one's full, you go to this one, and you just go all the way around until if there's none left, then you should probably expand your hash table, whatever. You can hash it out later.
It could be really inefficient with large hash tables where you duplicate.
Yeah, exactly. So you want a really good hash function that doesn't do that, because what should happen is it should be almost random. It should be like a random distribution, you know, whatever. So that way, if you have different data, the key is though, if you have the same data, you want it to be the same hash, obviously. So it should be deterministic, so you can look it up later. But you want them to be spread out. So a cryptographic hash function is that same idea of you have some data and you want to get a number that's spread out on a range. Well, cryptographic hash function, like this has a range of 256 bits or 512 bits or whatever, something really big. So you want it to be spread out. And you also want to have other properties like you can't guess it. So use like a bunch of weird math like sponge functions and stuff, but to do it. But it basically is like, for instance, the first ones are like modular. Like it's basically something you can't work backwards from. So once you've done the operation, you can't guess from the hash what the data could be. Or if you can, it's like this huge range of states, so it doesn't matter. So, I don't know, basically what you get is you get like an ID for that information. There's no way, it's really difficult to falsify because you can't compute it backwards. And since we've established a rule about the output that these bits must be 0, since you can't go backwards from that, you have to end up with so many 0 bits, it's like basically impossible to falsify. You have to hash things to get it. Or the hash function is broken. So, anyway, so that's why you do it that way. And but the reason they have these bits 0 in the front is because you want it to be difficult to do this so everyone doesn't make blocks and everyone doesn't get big ones and they don't have like a giant tree. So that would just sort of ruin it. One of the reasons you have a blockchain like this too is because these transactions you don't really care about. All you care about is the result, is what's in everyone's account at the end. And so, well, that's what the header does. And so what ends up happening is when you compress it later, you just end up with a bunch of headers in memory and you don't care about all the transactions at all. And that's why the hash is important as well. So for these first blocks though, what you do is you just have some transactions, you have the nonce, and you have your header. Then you put your hash, you hash this bit and, or you hash your header or whatever, with all these transactions and stuff. And you have that hash, something that's 0. The first one ever is probably gonna have like, well, it's gonna have a very low number of 0 bits because no one cares yet. And the algorithm computes it based on how many transactions there are and how many blocks are being produced. So that given some level of computing power, there's only so many transactions per 2 weeks span or something. So anyway, the cool part is this next block, the hash for it, or the block also includes the hash of these two. So now you've established that this is the parent of these and hash it up and put it in its thing. So its little header or whatever has all the information about the transactions that it cares about and the nonce, but it also has these two hashed. So it just creates this tree of history that goes this way. So, and then what the clients do is they pick the longest chain. So say like somebody else, say you're an attacker or something, and you want to make a bunch of false transactions or one false transaction or whatever. You want to create a block header, and you want to have these, and you want to have your transaction in it or whatever. You want to double spend your points, like that. So say you've made a transaction here, but you want to, do something else with it before this gets or whatever, make sure this doesn't get accepted. Everyone else is trying to make blocks as fast as possible. So that's why that's also why this number is adjusted, because everyone, it's not like you make a block whenever there's transactions available. You make the block as quickly as possible. So that way the amount of machinery you have on either side of the tree determines which one is like true, basically. So like if you're an attacker, the idea would be that you don't have the entire network at your disposal. So you're attacking with like 1 or 2 computers. It's almost that it would be near impossible to compete with, whatever number there is now, a huge network. But even with that, like if there were 10 on this side and you have 2 CPUs or whatever, the chances of you getting ahead is slim because you have to get this block and then you also have to get this block or whatever. So that's 2 that you've got. So you got basically do twice the work to get around. So it's like the paperwork's not a better probability than I'm giving you here, but it's basically very small that you would be able to do that, especially when the network gets large. Like it is right now.
Learning used to be profitable like way back when it started, but now that people are forming really, really large pools, it's honestly a waste of money to actually try to do it.
Oh yeah.
It depends on what ant miner you have, honestly. Like if you're willing to dump $1,000 into a miner that's doing like over like a terahash, like then maybe it would be worth it. But even then, you're dropping like a few $1,000 on a single piece of equipment you're hoping it works.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And if it ends up coming up short, I mean, oh well, because there's no warranty on that. Like, there's very few places that ever give you warranties for ant miners ever. So,
Well, you could always just get a bunch of computers too.
yeah, but that's, ASIC processors are going to go way faster than stopping I guess you could like chain servers together and do that, but that'd be the only.
It doesn't have to be the same one. Your probability of getting a block is the same regardless of computer power. Like it's the compute.
Oh,
Because
I
you
guess
only
if you
get
go to
half.
like the right pool, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah. Huh?
If you get to like the right pool and enough processing power, I guess it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Basically, it's just your processing power you have at your disposal is your probability of getting a hash that fits that. Yeah. So this is their transaction, and this is more information they give you as well. So you also have like, you know, public-private keys for how people distinguish who owns the transaction or whatever, who it's coming from, and what it is in the hash, whatnot. So yeah. Basically, this is just the transaction part. This isn't about
A lot of the owners, the problem is they can't verify if one of the owners did not double spin the coin.
what?
It's like, read the line under the diagram there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like you can double spin
Right.
the coin.
Yeah, yeah. This is the. I believe this part is where he's actually trying to show. Yeah. So this is just a really simplified version, and then he goes on to explain like another algorithm that's his or whatever. So, blah blah blah. Timestamps. Oh, okay. So this is also how you. Yeah. She's gonna put.
I mean, it's a decent way to make money if you're not the one picking up power bill either.
Huh?
I mean, that's pretty much the main cost after you bought it, right?
Oh yeah, well, you know, it used to be more profitable. But yeah, the proof of work part is really cool. See, here, each transaction you have previous hash and you have them also whatever in your block. Okay. So, yeah. And since you have the previous hash, it should be. That's the cool part because you don't have to do, you don't have to have any server, any centralized anything to determine the time it happened. You just have a relative idea of what happened before what based on CPU power because of the position the tree ends up in. That's also how matrix.org or whatever that thing kind of works that way as well.
So basically, if someone from outside of like a pool of people working on the chain, if someone decides, you know, I'm going to try and mess with the system, they would have to have collectively more CPU power than everyone else that is currently ahead in the chain to actually be able to mess with it.
Yeah, pretty much. The probability is against you. It's still probabilistic, so like you could get lucky and you know get a block or whatever and screw stuff up.
Randomized thing, try to get like,
Yeah.
the luckiest person on earth.
Another cool thing is, yeah, like if you're mining in a pool or something, you can also. So there's the two ways you get money or whatever for Bitcoin and whatever. Okay, so I don't know why I quoted that.
Like Bitcoin as hipsters.
We have to quote it for the rest of the.
They can see you quoting it as they're recording to you.
So, one of the ways you make money on this is each block has the algorithm. You know, the algorithm for the client says that each block, once it gets accepted, they allocate a certain amount of Bitcoin to that person who made the block. So, I think right now it's like 25 or something if you get a block, and that's why there's pools, right? It gets bloated like tiny amounts because no one really had enough CPU power to ever get a whole block themselves, I believe. And so, yeah. So what you do with a pool or whatever is basically you just everyone mines 4 blocks. When someone gets one, they split it up against it, mine's called or whatever. So.
I was like, you have enough money to own a warehouse with a farm in it. Why are you getting Bitcoin?
I mean, if it's profitable.
Yeah.
People who do that, there's legitimate companies that do nothing but own warehouses with racks of it with giant fans running.
I wonder what your return would be if you just allocate like a bunch of AWS.
But no,
Probably none.
I'm sure you could check it if you knew
So
what the
Bitcoin
stats
is
were.
like, so you mine Bitcoin from these blocks.
Right. So whatever you
What
get,
what really is the Bitcoin?
it's just a hash or whatever. Well,
But that seems.
it's just an amount. So and then you have it. So I guess there isn't a thing like a Bitcoin. There's just a record that you have so many of them
Yeah.
in the
I'm
history.
just wondering like how it
So it's not.
translates to real currencies.
Oh. Well, there's a record you have so many of them, and there's.
That's
Oh, yeah, that's true.
economic question. Basically, it's just like the U.S. dollar bill. If no one cared about it,
It exactly.
It wouldn't work,
I mean,
right?
I was gonna say-
The only difference is this is a non-physical currency. People just find
But
it
there is
right.
a concrete
I mean, it's
Version
a,
now.
the CPU
Yeah.
power is like your
it's a measure
power.
of work.
Yeah, so you have, well, yeah, exactly. So since it has a basis in CPU power, you could say how cheap are CPUs and how much power does this take, blah, 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 expenses, and then it'll even out.
So,
Yeah, so if I'm hearing this right, the hash is actually technically the serial number.
No, because there's not, it doesn't, well, there's like that, I guess there's like the place it was
It's the
created.
Right,
generation of.
You could
right.
say this is the block where these
And you could-
originated.
And you could use that in translation, like,
It,
and
Not
then,
usually. What you would end up doing is if you wanted to transfer it to like a bank, is you have another transaction which would say, I give this much to the bank, and then the bank has that much in the tree.
right, but isn't
So
the
it doesn't
whole
exist
point
by
of
itself.
Bitcoin not to like have it? I don't know.
I
Anyway,
mean,
Well, it's decentralized, right? So
right,
there is no central tree. Everyone has the same tree, and they agree.
right.
every hash is a transaction. That's what I've always been noticing. It's each
There is a
individual
hash
it
for
transaction.
feels like a self-fulfilling
And
loop, like you
eventually-
have to have some beginning transaction that someone else processes. And
Well, but they're created through blocks, so they make themselves.
yeah, that's weird.
They
Well,
do
the
it
cool part
until
is it
there's a
creates
cap.
itself, and then it peters out as there's more CPU for the blocks.
And eventually they're gonna cap out. Like they've set a cap for Bitcoin. It's like
Well-
15 million, I think, in circulation or something.
Well, see, that's not really a cap. That's just
Well,
It's
the way it's gonna peter out. Like,
Yeah.
Is the number of zeros at the beginning of the hash double every, I don't know if it's time-based or.
well, it doesn't.
It's
It's a
You
function.
add a zero.
Well, it depends. Okay, it depends. So what it does is it measures the amount of the amount of blocks you made in the last 2 week span, and then it adjusts the hash for that. So theoretically, you could have all the computers drop out for 2 weeks, and then it'd be almost nothing. It would go down a little bit, but it only goes down every 2 weeks, and the amount it goes down is not as much as it goes up. So it's 200% up and 30% down or something. So you have to wait you could wait several months and watch it go down again if you had control of every computer ever. But then it'd be useless, right?
To be honest though, difficulty increase rate is nothing compared to what it used to be way back. It's petering out, isn't it? Like,
The difficulty increase?
because as the difficulty increases, people are processing less
Well,
values.
I mean,
Right,
you can
but-
Google
because-
it.
Well, there's 1 to 10 people is a lot more than the million people join. There's already 100 million, so it's only one.
I was gonna say, just keep in mind it's recording.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing the Bitcoin.
Alright.
Bitcoin. It's just a blockchain difficulty, right?
Sure. Well, what the current one? Yeah, there's stats on that.
Yeah, you can find a lot
So-
of websites that keep track.
So I mean, I
Yep, there you
understand,
go.
there's the issue of how much processing power you have, but
The difficulty is at
how does it
22
work, of
to
actually
225
going from one,
billion.
node to another, and
Okay.
accessing a block or something?
Okay, so
I mean, I understand, yeah, you could buy software from but
okay,
if
so
you were to write your own Bitcoin mining,
Do you know how long
Then-
it's
out,
going to take to make a
then-
single one?
Okay, well, all the constants are in the reference client or whatever, but
Like I said, depends on your
but it's
processor and what you're doing.
I can't remember how it does it now. I think it's changed because at one point they were even there was an IRC channel where people would check where all they would just register or whatever.
IRC,
And
and everyone uses that.
Now it's automatic. That's the reason. There's a
What's
base
automatic?
or something now. There's a
oh, there's DNS now.
yeah. There's some
So,
kind of
yeah.
service that specifically does nothing but
Yeah, the problem with
reauthorizes
decentralized things
it.
is if you don't know everyone, it kind of has to be centralized, at least at first.
There's a Bitcoin core.
Try to explain a Bitcoin wallet, please.
There's the miners who create.
I still don't
blocks.
even really understand how they work.
Core, and what construct the trees and what.
I've been using it for a while now, and I still don't get it.
Associated with what blocks and what.
So you could,
Okay. Well, that's just one node though.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Bitcoin core can be anything special because that's the whole point. CBC. So it could be a node that happens to keep track of all that information for a node, but
Right, but it's decentralized nodes
If you're starting
that all have a tree.
mining, we're talking
Right.
about
They all
have ASIC miners.
authenticate the transaction.
You have a bunch of friends that have decent CPUs and GPUs together. Start your own pool.
Right.
I don't know how
Focus
to-
on, like, the
Well, okay,
closest block
the
that you can.
authentications
That
or whatever are
has
basically
very few miners on it and just
what
try to
happens
keep
is
top people, right?
That's
Okay,
all.
so when you get a race like this,
Join a
this
pool,
is like, you know,
the
like
process
whatever,
of
you have a race.
okay, so like
So,
the tops of that pool are so small, you'll be getting like fractionally.
okay, so yeah, okay, so you end up with like the network or whatever, and so it kind of ends up on how quickly you spread. So, okay, so there's like a node here, and whatever, like a bunch of them. Okay, so this part, so say these two are otherwise equal, right, or whatever. This is A, okay, so A is here, B is over here. So say B gets like to these 3 nodes, but A happens to get to like 4 over here. Now we got more consensus for this. So what ends up happening is like what ends up happening is I pick the longest tree. So in the case of A, what you have is these 2 nodes, this one and this one. So it believes the longest tree is A, which actually in this case is, okay. Okay, so now they're equal to 1. Okay, so it picks the longest tree of 2 or whatever. So this would be a race. Anyway, okay, so if A gets more of the base nodes or whatever, then you have more CPU consensus on that. And what happens is, since every CPU is running at like maximum whatever to generate another block, now you have what? 4 to 3. So these 3 are generated on this one, and these 4 are generated on this one. This one is probably going to get another block. Once it gets another block, it is the longest, and it'll get broadcasted. Eventually, these will get it, and notice that this is the longest. It'll probably happen before they generate another one, or this will have more, and eventually the consensus will sway that way. So they always pick the longest chain, since they're always generating more blocks. That's what you do. So that's how that part works. There's nothing centralized about it, so everything is based on these like longest chain hashing continuous things. The cool part is though, each of these transactions or whatever, all those are kept up with, but again, you don't have to. All you have to do is keep up with the header, and that's really small. So like I think the original prediction was, since there's a limit on the number of blocks you can have as well, because the algorithm adjusts like every 2 week span, it'll make the hash more difficult, so less blocks will be created. So you end up with like a constant number over time of block headers being created. And the only thing you have to have in memory is block headers. So over a so many year span, you'll only end up with like something like 16 megs or whatever. I think he estimated by like 2012 or something like that. So, and it's a constant rate. So from 2008 to 2012 was 4 years. So every 4 years, like 16 megs or something, header. So it's really like that's all that you have to do to keep up with the chain and prevent like double spending and stuff as far as I know.
So since it's decentralized, I mean, does that necessarily mean it's untraceable?
No, I mean like okay, so the transactions again use public-private keys, I believe. So
If you could break it down, you could actually see all the hands that Bitcoin's passed through.
well, technically, but it's been they're like private keys. So if you so the public-private key, whatever, pair. So it's not really like if you can. So if someone pays a public key, whatever, and then that one spends it, you can track what happened to it during that time, right? So you can track the history of every transaction ever, whatever, and who got it, and what their private or public key is, or whatever. So I believe, yeah. So that part's fine. But there's like technically there's no identity associated with the public key, right? So you don't really know who it is besides that that's a key, and you can make another one transfer to that one. But you know, like for instance, if you happen to have associated some transaction as being like sketchy or whatever, you could track what happened to it over time, and then you could say, if something transferred to like Western Union, then you happen to know that like this public key belongs to Western Union or whatever, like if it happens to transfer that, then you can ask. Once you know it's transferred to something that you actually know exists in the real world, you could like submit it or whatever, like give them some type of legal documents to say what happened here, what was this?
Just keep it keep it Bitcoin, like.
Well, yeah, but saying if the government wanted to like take your money and you happen to transfer it out of the mysterious number world into the real world, it can be taken. So like, yeah, it's not really.
Well, otherwise, they could not easily at least.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, like you have to sign it, unless they do.
It's like the dark net. That's
How much it costs.
Yeah, exactly, like,
They still want cover keys, or they have the cover key.
but yeah, so like, it's not like in the real world where you can just take money, you have to,
So basically, I should make all my money in Bitcoin, well, not make all my, like, money in Bitcoin, but like, get a massive amount of money in Bitcoin and just only use like Bitcoin transactions and not pay my taxes, and then the government couldn't take money out of my account.
well, see this big ass transaction at the beginning where it came from the real world into Bitcoin.
I was gonna say, then they would
You're
just
not
arrest me,
wrong.
but.
If you have no
So,
money, how are you paying
How
your
long
bills?
is that? Busted. Internet?
Well, see, you're right though in that it does originally come out of like, it originates here, but once it gets into the hands of somebody that's just in the real world, it kind of has like paperwork behind it, you know, so
Yeah.
like, if it ever gets in the hands of a bank, the bank will keep up with that. And then they can be, hit by the government or whatever, and they can track, they'll know who they send to, if they're
Unless you have a sketchy,
Cryptocurrency.
like that Swiss offshore bank account.
Like, really, diehard Bitcoin enthusiasts don't like the ideas of like pulling credits and
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like ties a
Because they're an actual
hash
hash.
to using.
Yeah.
So it's like the real Bitcoin that you
Yeah.
can
Also,
Take all the gyms really sketchy, those like stationary generators, and hook them up to computers so that you don't have to pay for electricity costs. It will exercise and generate your electricity.
I feel like the exchange rate on that is not what you think. Not equivalent.
There's the guy, like, the theory is that the guy who invented Bitcoin is actually like a bunch of huge businesses, and they like mash their names together, and that's what the guy's name is. So, yeah, I don't know if you've heard that one yet, but it's Bitcoin creator
That's kind of
is dead. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like. It's supposed to be like a bunch of them that like it's like Moto being Motorola and like Naka being I can't remember, but that's the supposed reason name. I don't know. Maybe it's on the wiki.
I think they call it like the unit of. There's like a Bitcoin, but there's also a smaller unit of like whatever, and they call that as a Bitcoin.
I think so, yeah.
Wait, alright, so I'm guessing Litecoin works the same way basically, is this?
Oh yeah, every other one is exactly the same, with different constants maybe.
I'm guessing it's just easier to come by now.
Nakamoto
the
might be
constants
team.
might be different. The
Oh.
algorithm for consensus is probably exactly the same, and the way they do the.
They're saying that it's like a bunch of people's names mashed together along with like businesses who had also like funded the project. So like Kaminsky. Yeah. But anyway, there's a bunch of people who were in the starting of it.
That one guy said that, so it's true. You can almost go look at the default.
But you can follow that rabbit hole for days because a lot of people think that this was created to like bring down government currencies.
Scroll down on that one.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
Or the steps to run the default. Yeah.
broadcast to all nodes.
Wow.
Sounds like a campus.
Yeah. So the other thing is, when you're working on a block, what basically you just increment I think the algorithm is basically just, it doesn't have to be, but what people usually do is, you just increment your nonce or whatever, this little bit of random data, and with the same transactions, and then you can also add, of course, since it's random, it doesn't matter, you can just add transactions as well. So, since you usually don't find a block forever, you just end up working and then adding transactions as they come to your node, and then when you finally get a block, you have all those transactions in it. It's really not that difficult.
Anyone ever seen a mining GUI before?
Or what?
I've
like a piece of mining software for like Windows and stuff like that. Like you can find like a bunch of like you can literally go on YouTube and find like 12 free ones, and there's a bunch of people who like they'll pay a little bit extra because they say theirs is like faster, it gives more options. But really, you can just literally find open source ones and code one yourself.
Well, there's one that's like look up Bitcoin reference client and see if that's. Here, just go to this. Go to the first link and see if they actually have like a link to the source. So click that.
What?
I
This
wonder
one?
if it's got like a UI you can actually look at it.
Oh, it's got a
Bitcoin.
Git. It's got a GitHub.
GitHub, yeah. Okay. Bitcoin/Bitcoin. Oh, okay. So this is the reference line.
Yeah, and then there's
What's
a bunch
it
of
in? What's it
people.
written in? Okay. I bet it's C++
Yeah.
and Python and some C.
And HT.
M4. Goodness.
Yeah, it'll probably mostly be in C++ just because.
I think M4 is like a macro language.
Possible. I mean, it's just running the same thing over and over again, right?
It says make.
The only thing that's changing, it's not changing the process. The only thing that's being changed is the hash, right? So, whatever you're mining,
Huh?
the only thing you're changing, you're still using the same formula. You're just changing the hash or the block
Right,
you're
but
working
I'm sure
on.
they've patched it or whatever, and they can always change the way it works.
That's probably where that macro is
Like,
coming from.
where this one happened. Yeah, like 9 hours ago, there was another commit. Fix broken, send compact test.
It's also twice as much, so we need to pay stuff,
So the point is if you make a better software than what's right here, you can literally make hundreds of dollars, like a lot of money actually. Like,
What?
if you can make a better miner client where it like goes through and it just finds one that's not being worked on, if you can make something like that, you'd make.
Well, you can't find one that's not being worked on. Really?
I mean, yeah, but I mean one that has the least amount of like gives you the best chance to out process.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, everyone's working on it.
A sniping program, if you will. If
Okay,
that's the
but the
blockchain.
problem is the algorithm works so that you can't really find like a block not being worked on because it's just going to be like covered with other blocks that don't care about it anymore. Really quickly. I mean, yeah, you're pretty much not going to improve it.
So this is a code for the core.
No, this is just the reference client,
Like the base.
but core or whatever. But yeah,
Base
but
miner
yeah, it's like
client,
this is the reference client though. So
Yeah.
And then there's also Dogecoin, which is valuable.
migrate blocks or authentication.
there's no authentication. It's all distributed.
There's no
It's a client.
There's no
server.
authentication. You just assume it's good.
Well, like they all check it through the same. Like, okay, every client checks the validity of every block, and then like what I was saying, the consensus is just that there aren't more blocks. Like if the consensus among all the nodes in the network is that this block is bad, they just build on top of this block, and this block ends up somewhere ignored. So, if I'm not mistaken, this is just the reference client. So, and there isn't anything else besides clients. Yeah, you can scroll down the rating.
Hmm?
Merge 8,700.
What is big trading?
Tree.
I mean,
Yeah.
and if you don't get what we're saying here, if you don't get the mathematical explanation, there's 100 different videos on YouTube explaining Bitcoin and like how to actually do it.
This is not at all mathematical.
It's more,
There is some
you actually learned about hashes
Math.
there.
The only math.
The only thing, well, I mean, they don't even teach you about hashes. The only thing they tell you about hashes in like the basic tutorials is like your hashes per second, which is what people assume to be like your processing speed, which it is, I guess.
Hatching is a general concept too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
That's
But
done a lot.
that's the point, is that you guys are actually giving why it works, not
Oh,
just,
yeah.
oh, it works.
so yeah, that hash they use right now is
Testing.
just
What is that?
is the bottleneck for development? We pull more requests.
Testing is a bottleneck.
Just get rid of it.
Yeah, just get
Always always.
TBD.
Any mistake might cost people lots of money.
The guy we're gonna have to do that guy's great.
We should just like be terrible people. Be like, what?
Actually, I guess it's bring it up now.
I never read that, so I'm sure that's good.
Wesley's not the one that's actually speaking of, is he?
No, it's that guy that lives around here. Wesley, I think it's.
I forget his name actually now. So, October 6th, which is 2 weeks from Thursday, I think. Yeah. We're having a red hat speaker who graduated from UALR come and talk about like best practices, unit testing, and version control, which we already talked about, but it'll be interesting for him to talk about how he actually uses it for the industry job.
Actually, would be cool.
Yeah, like actually collaborating with the students and stuff. So that'll be cool. October 6th. It's I'm pretty sure it's 2 weeks from Thursday.
Do you have a mouse?
I
Other
do,
than
but
that.
why do you need a mouse for computer science?
Use your page
Why do you
down.
need
Mice
to
are
use
forbidden. I only carry one to use it with logic words.
I only use WGet.
I mean, it's obvious you don't use one in CSGO.
I mean, we're not done anyway.
That's true.
Any questions? If you want a miner, you can literally type in GUI miner on Google for Bitcoin.
What was that again? Okay.
To join a pool, you can just check out like pools and like go register your name.
The pools, though.
Yeah, if you have a bunch of.
Are all the pools connected, or are all the pools?
Everything is decentralized.
Yeah,
It's a
So-
pipeline.
So it's just, I mean,
So-
how would you say, like, what, there is a pool for?
This is the one I'm part
Yeah,
of.
there's a pool at UALR or something. Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so you could say. Okay,
or
so,
are like the nodes on the pool kind of random, like? they're
Oh,
gonna be
okay,
in-
so how, a pool is kind of away from, this protocol has nothing to do with pools. Pools are just like, probably someone made a, version of the client or something, to just automate this process. But basically, it's everyone on the entire pool agrees, when I find a block, I'll just get the Bitcoin and then I'll generate, in that, whatever, what I would assume is, when you generate a block, you just put in transactions to distribute the results of that block to all the members of the pool. So when you generate a block, it just has transactions to distribute the resulting cash and stuff to the pool. And again, the number of Bitcoins you get per block also decreases over time. But you can also do transaction fees, which are the leftover money from transactions. So say you have like,
That's the taxes of this system. Is
well,
the-
it's a, what do they call it? Transaction fee.
yeah.
I mean,
So-
like what you would have for fees in the bank, instead you have this.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
and that's one of those things like APIs that people have. So, say you could have a pool or something, or a big server thing, and you could have an API which interacts with Bitcoin. So the person who uses Bitcoin doesn't have to have a Bitcoin farm or whatever. Just the person who has it, and they put their transaction in there to do that, you end up with some extra Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin gets taken by the person who made the transaction or made the block. So that way, that's probably what's going to end up happening is you just have these giant pools, and then people use APIs, but they don't want to invest in a giant server farm. Just use the API and have a transaction fee to use the system.
There's already pools like this one that actually I believe I'm a part of this one. And you can literally just sign up and they're like, use whatever GUI you want. We'll just give you like a login. So that way you'll send it to us and we'll like put through our site to our, and they'll award it through this site to your wallet. So instead of like you having to do it by yourself, they'll give you a piece of the pool depending on how much power you're giving them. And they'll like basically siphon a piece off of it to your account.
Yeah, all they have to do is give you the block to hash.
Yeah.
So,
Is that petahash?
yeah. Huh?
That top left number above the word slush, it says 110.5 PEO per second.
Yeah.
Petahash.
Peta.
The current rate right now for hashing in the Bitcoin system is like 1.2 zettahash.
Well, it says right here what the actual value is.
Yeah.
Like it's right there. It's $613.70. Which that's not bad. That's not bad for a full pool. You know, if you're putting a good amount in, that's pretty all right.
Yeah. So
That's per second.
So what is that, and how much is the Bitcoin worth?
It's already translated. It's already
That's how much-
613.
I'm trying to figure out how many Bitcoin. What does
Well-
it say? How many
Like
Bitcoin?
that's how much a whole Bitcoin is.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh
it's
my
like
bad then.
Bitcoin every-
Then
okay.
a petahash would be like
Go to the stats tab.
Yeah.
That's
that's
difficulty.
per Bitcoin. So
This is difficulty.
Or go to
well, I
the
thought
difficulty.
difficulty was like per Bitcoin.
No. Difficulty determines how hard it is.
Yeah,
to
that's-
access.
Oh,
that's
that's
the
per
number that
hash.
they-
That's per
Go to
hash.
the stats tab.
On the top.
Huh?
Go to
Stats
stats.
tab.
And they have a conversion ratio, I think.
Bitcoin's mine 1,000.
Do they have like a, do they have a conversion ratio? Oh, for the transaction.
Find this big block.
Well, you can literally
$1.83.
market
Wait,
price.
is that just for them?
That's market price right there for Bitcoin as of this moment. Trade volume, trade volume, mining cost, total miners revenue. Divide, yeah. So that's how much they're making total, but that doesn't say per pool. You'd have to like check out what the pool's percentage is. I guess you could just like Google that right now, like pool percentages,
I think that's how many blocks have been
total mining.
The cool part is once you have a big enough percentage of the pool, or people come to
Here it is.
consensus on how much it costs to do a transaction.
So these are like, actually, this is something cool that you don't get to see, even if you're signing up for them. Some of these are private pools, where it's literally corporations that, these are the corporate guys you're going against. Like, these are the guys that actually do nothing but own servers and like tons of miners that do nothing but sit there and run this all day. And they're like 50% of it is nothing but like corporations that you cannot join unless you have like a corporate license for. And then there's everyone else, which is all of these other people, and that's Slush's pool. That's the one. This is what an individual would look like. So you could look at it for Slush pool. That's blocks, so it's not giving us
Wait, that's the blocks for what?
just
Ever?
it's last 24 hours. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 24 hours.
Okay, so they got 32.
No, that's.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Let's say you're on 24 hours.
They've got an 8 in the last 24 hours.
Okay.
So,
Get like 4 days.
It's $600.
8, yeah, 8 blocks. And that's not bad for
no, it's not,
individuals.
because it's 24 Bitcoins per block.
Oh,
25.
8,
Right now.
24. So we're gonna say 8 times 24, and that's what these guys are making on my pool per 24 hours.
Yeah.
So that's 180 something. Well, yeah, 190.
So, yeah, 200.
Yeah. So about 200 Bitcoins, which that translates to like,
200 times 600 -ish.
yeah, that's like a few thousand. That's a few $10,000 actually. Yeah, at least. So they're making a decent amount of money a day, and that's split among like everyone there. And you gotta remember, all this is independent miners. Like if you have a lot of equipment, most of the time you can like they'll like sign you up. You can talk to people if you have so many terahashes, and you can get in on like that corporate thing going on. But most of that stuff is like in other countries. They usually don't outsource here. Usually it's like places where you're allowed to do nothing but have a warehouse of nothing but like.
Okay, so if you did 8 blocks, and each block is 25, and Bitcoin's worth $600, that's $120,000 in 24 hours.
Yep, 124, and that's split among all the guys in Slush's pool, which is like.
That's a lot of every.
Well, we don't. Well, let me see.
Yeah, a week, about $1 million.
It'd be easier if somebody already has set up or something, not just
Not bad.
like, oh, they tell me to push here and I just push there.
That's block size.
This
That's
is
not
low
what I
for
want.
everyone.
You had that right.
I just want to see about how many there are
How the,
in the pool. See what your possibilities are.
because they're not mining.
Yeah, pay to hash.
Wait, what is that?
Hash rate users.
The Bitcoin
Like I
folds,
said, it's really up to
they're not miners.
all you guys.
They just
You
keep
want
track.
to pitch it,
Oh,
if you do
whatever I
pitch
do
it.
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean,
you can say otherwise. It's
that's
just
like,
gonna be
that's
buying
one
trees.
Bitcoin, but like
6 of
do
us.
transactions.
It's 11.
No, the block are the transactions though.
So these are all the active users.
Well, you have to
So you add all those together and you divide 100 whatever thousand, and that's your chance of
verify that.
money. If they're all averaging out at like a few K to hashes.
So
Like somebody spends
If you want to say they're about the same.
a portion of, I don't know, but it's a,
So you're looking at,
they're Bitcoin tech.
that's 5, let's just say that's 4, let's just say that's 3. So that's 9, 10,
Don't care.
11. Hey, someone just got added. So you've got about 12,000 people, 12,000 users that are being separated over, 100,000 over 12,000. That's still not bad. You're still making a little bit of money. But that's the one I used to go on, and I got a few bucks on
Well,
it.
if you have a
That's
pool
about it.
like that, you're good. You can just trust on